Hey, you're listening to the Getting Smart podcast. I'm Victoria Andrews. And for the past few months, we've hosted a community of practice with school leaders from all over the country with a focus on assessment and evaluation, as well as school within a school practices that can be scaled out. These communities of practices have been supported through our work with the Learning Innovation Fund supported by the Walton Family Foundation. Through these communities of practice, we've looked specifically at, like I said, assessment and how it can truly capture the lived experiences and knowledge of young people and how we can scale it to larger systems and the practices of smaller, agile schools, which is why I'm super excited today about my conversation with members of the One Stone family. You've got Celeste Bolin, who's the executive director, and two young people, Raya Naymik and Sophie Gunther. How are y'all doing today?
Good. Thanks for having us. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Very grateful for y'all being here, even though, from what I understand, your campus offers flexibility for events specifically like this. Yeah. Yeah. Let's get to it and let's have a good little conversation about assessment and evaluation and what that means, especially as students at One Stone. So, Sophie, I know that you're a passionate athlete, right?
Yes.
All right. And you play volleyball, right, girl?
Yes.
As a former middle school volleyball player, super passionate about sports and just all that it requires because it's a different skill set than if you're, preparing for an algebra test or a physics test. And so you've developed those traits like discipline and resilience and performance tracking. So can you share a little bit about how some of those skills have helped you with testing in that environment at One Stone?
Yeah, definitely. One of my favorite things to talk about that connects the most, I think, in my learning and with athletics is the mindset of try again, or we like to call it failing forward at One Stone. It's kind of just the ability to say, hey, I didn't do well at this, or I didn't like this thing, but I'm still interested in it, or I want to do well at it. So I'm going to go try it again because I know that I have this support system who believes in me and wants me to grow.
And was that something that was like familiar to you? Was it natural? Or was it the background with sports that helped that to tie together?
I definitely think a sports background has helped, but I would say in a very interesting way, they've kind of like collided together in the sense that my journey at One Stone and with that fail forward mindset and that encouragement from my coaches and peers has helped me become a better athlete. Because when I go up and I hit a ball all the way to the wall in the back of the court, I'm not afraid to go up and try to hit the next ball harder. And I kind of think of my learning that way of like, okay, I'm going to go try to lead this experience. And if it totally falls flat on its face, it's like, well, I'm going to try this again and I'm going to maybe reach out for some help. But I know that I have this support system who wants me to try again and who knows that I can do this.
And so for those that may not be familiar, One Stone is a high school. And so that opportunity to fail forward and to try again, it's embedded in the culture of the school, right, Sophie?
Yes.
And how long have you been at One Stone?
I'm in my third year currently. I'm on a 4-year plan, so I plan to graduate next year.
Okay. And all of your high school experience is One Stone, yes?
Yes.
All right. So, I mean, just being embraced in an environment like that, where you are encouraged to fail and fail again, that's not, that's unique. So that I'm sure you know that not everybody learning environment or their school fosters that sense of it's okay to try. Let's learn from our mistakes and let's, actually embrace those mistakes. Talk about what kind of athletes you are in all that you've done.
Yeah, so I am a competitive athlete in terms that I travel almost every weekend. Um, I am out of town a lot of the time, and I think that's also kind of intersected with learning in an interesting way because I'm navigating how am I a good leader? How am I a positive student while also being out of town and having all these external pressures outside of school and external stress, honestly, kind of thinking about like, I have practice tonight. I want to work on this thing, but I need to make sure that I'm present here with my peers, and we call our teachers coaches, just for clarification, which I know can get confusing. But because we believe that our teachers are learning with us, they're
Mm.
coaching us through things rather than just lecturing and teaching us. It's the concept that I'm going to look up this cool Russian war that happened, and maybe I get to teach my teacher about that as well. So I just wanted to clarify that. But for that point, I have actually led some experiences, which has also been really interesting with sports. I definitely can see how my leadership in sports and being a team captain goes into helping people learn and deciding, like, what are we going to do today? What's the lesson plan? How do I make sure that everyone stays in this area and doesn't disperse and distract everyone else at the school?
Hey.
That sort of thing. And I definitely have a lot of support to be able to just like go up to a coach and be like, I want to form a group so that we can talk about Angela Davis or her books or her writing, all that sort of stuff.
And I think that I love to hear that sense of agency that is fostered in at One Stone. Like you said, you can speak to your coaches at One Stone and take that initiative. And before we move to Raya and her like just multifaceted dynamic life, Sophie, can you share a little bit about what it's like to participate in a space where discipline and resilience are honored?
Yeah. So I've always been a pretty like grade oriented A+ student. I've always taken pride in like getting that high number and performing in a high way. And one of the things about One Stone that I notice about the grading system the most is that you're taking areas like applied mathematics and scientific inquiry and synthesis and areas that you have in a more like academic way, and they're held at the same level as leadership or grit or communication and other
Mhm.
life skills that you need that are like part of the process of learning and part of the process of making a project rather than kind of just focusing on what your product is or what your grade is. We're looking at like, what did you do during this period of time? How did you grow? What did you do that makes you a better person or a better leader?
And I know in some other learning environments, some of those skills and those traits are kind of like either diminished or not even addressed at all. And, the content that you're learning is, while there is value there, I really appreciate what you said about like, how are you, continuing to grow and evolve as a human being?
Yeah.
Mhm. Rhea. So, Rhea, you are, like I said, just a Renaissance woman. Your hands are in many pots, and we love a multi-hyphenated woman, and that is indeed you. You sit on the board of One Stone. You have interest in conscious living. You have a passion for art. You excel with, traditional academics as well. So I'm kind of floored and a little bit intimidated by you, but also like silently cheering for you in the background too. So can you talk just a little bit about how do you think schools could better recognize and assess diverse forms of learning?
Hmm. Oof, that's a good question. And I think that One Stone has done some really special stuff to kind of address that. And when One Stone began as a school, the question that was asked was like, what's missing from your learning? And a huge one was like relevancy.
Mm.
I think that brings in that dynamic part of it because, like, reality in the real world, you're not just doing a math problem. You're
Yes.
doing a math, like, I was taking an exponentials and logarithms class not that long ago. And I was talking to my dad about it, and I was like, yeah, like, I don't know. It's like cool and it's helping me learn how to learn, but I don't see myself using logarithms. And he was like, "I just use logarithms and had to learn them in my job." And he's like a water quality biologist. Like, no way. But it wasn't just him like solving a given problem. It was like it's because of he's looking at the oxygen levels in this river for this reason, for the farmers. Like it's a dynamic problem that involved his leadership with his team and his curiosity and his scientific inquiry. Like all of these skills are pulled in, and it's not just mathematical application. And so I think One Stone really keys into that and helps students define a goal in an area of interest, not just by its academic title.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like when I'm in a math experience, more so than practicing mathematical application, I'm practicing vulnerability and curiosity. I don't super connect or feel like I have a natural talent for math, but
Same.
I enjoy and find a lot of value in being vulnerable and asking questions and figuring out how it can fit into my life
Yeah.
instead of just being like, no, I don't need that. Like, that doesn't, I'm in my final year at One Stone, similar to Sophie. I'm on a 4-year track, so I'm graduating in the spring. And my
Congratulations.
whole high school experience has been at One Stone. So my mindset has had a lot of time to develop into this place of being able to see my learning as dynamic and not just writing off an experience. And I think that would allow me now, like if I was placed right now back into a public school classroom, I wouldn't necessarily agree with potentially the curriculum or the grading process, but I'd be able to find value and like
Mhm.
create it into like a dynamic learning experience for myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's just a powerful trait to have, period, because I think like now more than ever, it's like if we're not like emotionally charged or excited by a topic, we can be so easy to dismiss it. What really stuck with me was that the fact that you said to be vulnerable. Like we're all humans and we always say that. But like to be vulnerable, it's like there's gonna be some areas in my life where like somebody else is gonna shine or get it faster than I do. But there's still learning that can happen. And while it also might be the content, it's also just learning about who we are and how we learn. And I can honestly say that I that was something that I didn't even the metacognitive portion of being able to speak to how we learn and finding value in the things that I may not even be passionate about too. So I really love how you worded that. And Rhea, you're while you've been at One Stone for a good period of time, you've also participated in like a larger comprehensive system too, correct?
Previously, yeah, I was at an international baccalaureate public charter school.
And can you contrast how assessment took place in that environment and One Stone, and then just some of the key things that you learned from those experiences?
Yeah, totally. At my previous school, assessment was just so like back burner. Like I didn't care because it didn't mean anything to me. And
Mhm.
like, I don't know, it just like meant nothing, especially because I was there in middle school where it like really meant nothing. Like it didn't go on a transcript that anyone would see.
Mm.
And it was like the learning wasn't relevant. It wasn't that hard, and like I didn't super struggle with the material. And I would get like very average grades. And I didn't have parents that super pressed me about it. I'm very grateful for my parents because they started in a place of being in a traditional mindset of like, oh, like you didn't do very good on that test. And we would kind of push back on each other of like, but why do I need to?
Mm.
And like, what is this proving to anybody?
Yeah.
Like, and I kind of maybe comprehended a book that didn't really apply to anything that I was doing. And I didn't have the space yet. Like, I had the ability, and One Stone brought that ability out in me. And I think most students, if not all students, have that ability to then start critically thinking and connecting a book that might not feel like it has any relevancy and connect it to something and like bring passion in, bring interest in. But at the time, I didn't have that or see that. And so it was just so mundane. And when I applied for One Stone, I was kind of at the point of just being so like numbed by that experience of just like
Yeah.
not actually learning and just memorizing, regurgitating, forgetting over and over again that if I hadn't gotten into One Stone, I wasn't going to go to high school and I was going to find something more meaningful to do because I just couldn't do another 4 years of that pattern.
Yeah. I'm just like living through that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man. Thanks for sharing that, Rhea. And so Celeste, I want you to chime in because hearing Sophie's experience as a competitive athlete and Ray's experience, in middle school, I know that there's been like this is the journey of assessment for Woodstone. It's not a light switch. It didn't happen overnight. To hear that effort is honored, grit is honored, resilience is honored. There's autonomy on even what is, covered or discussed. Can you share a little bit of just the journey to help get young people for their collective brilliance or in their individual brilliance to be able to shine through the learning experiences at One Stone?
Yeah, thanks for asking that, Victoria. And thanks for your articulation, Sophie and Raya. I just can't not reflect on what they just said, which is a huge part of what assessment looks like at One Stone. I heard a lot of showing up authentically as who they are, and then a lot of room to try different things to figure out who that person is and how they want to grow. I heard that there is a lot of emphasis on the process, not necessarily the product, and that relevancy, particularly to them, is key to the journey. All of that was behind the big why of our growth framework. Our growth framework is our assessment, which includes a growth transcript that is our really rigorous way of taking the students' feedback as well as the coaches' feedback, as well as community member feedback. Like what they're doing right now, I will do an assessment on after we're done. And it'll include some of the feedback you gave real time, Victoria. You're not necessarily doing the assessment, but you were a part of this process with these two, as well as what they said. And I think that those pieces coming together for a holistic picture, our portrait of a graduate, is key to how our growth framework works. So currently our growth framework has 24 real world durable skills. One of the big iterations we made is we went from 36 to 24. We have it in 4 quadrants: skills, mindset, creativity, and knowledge. And that was a very mindful, intentional shift because we realized tracking all these skills, and it could be for 2 years, 3 years, or 4 years, is overwhelming for the learner. I think if they came in knowing, Ray already mentioned a math experience on exponentials and logarithms, and she talked about vulnerability. If she knew, and we could ask Raya, well, you're going to be assessed on all 24. It's going to be mathematical application and communication and leadership and humility. That's way too much. That was a learning lesson along the way, that curating with the learner, with the student, what they're being assessed on. And it's not a top down. Sophie has actually firsthand experience on helping to assess a group of peers in an experience that she drove. She mentioned it, something we call community read, and they were reading Angela Davis. That is in itself a huge, collaborative process that we had to learn along the way as developing the growth framework with students. The voices of students coming into it saying, hey, we can't do 24 skills for everything we do at One Stone. It needs to be curated down. And we need to have some mindful curation based on what we want, as well as what the coaches are providing and bringing to the table, that covers all of it, right? That we do have a lot of opportunities for information literacy and research. And then there's plenty on iteration, ideation, and they're not all there at the same time. And then the real world piece, assessing the context in which a learner is applying their skills can be tricky. You just heard these two talk about it, and I'm already saying, they're going to be assessed on this. This is a real world experience. We're doing a podcast with Getting Smart. There's got to be a way to capture that. And then how does that funnel in? So right now, we really think of student agency, which you've mentioned, Victoria, and you can hear it in these students' voice. We talk about the context, which I referred to, and then complexity. And so our tools that are surrounding the growth framework help coaches as well as students see what an indicator of growth from emerging all the way to ours says mastering looks like, based on indicators for those particular skills. We didn't always have those. We've built those indicators with students. And we did have a lot of beautiful fail forward moments, some great heated debates around a table. Right now, we have a really great platform that helps us to record the assessment. It's a very human process, though. And a lot of what our assessment looked like back in 2016 was the coaches sitting around the table with notes from students on all these objectives and talking it out. We'd have 4-hour meetings, 6 of them. And that was us. It's us prototyping and getting in this very real assessment. We don't do that anymore. Not that we don't sit around a table and talk about it. Clearly, that's very laborious. But what those meetings did was to really hone in case studies of what learning looks like. How do we define context? How do we define agency and complexity? And how do we do it outside of just a brick and mortar school? We have an HQ. We have One Stone HQ, our headquarters, but the learning is happening so far beyond that. I mean, Raya just got back from presenting at South by Southwest. It was a big deal. Room full of educators asking hard questions and digging into our assessment. And Sophie's about to engage in a rigorous summer experience. It's not here at One Stone.
Yeah.
She's going on to higher ed for this experience this summer before her final year. Like, how are we capturing those opportunities appropriately? Because we don't need to go to whatever the opportunity is and say, here's our framework, make it fit this, that being the assessment. We don't do that. We say, wow, what is this opportunity you have? We want to make sure our assessment is capturing that appropriately.
No, you're good. I love that because it honors students where they are and it makes assessment way more accessible. So if you have a basketball player that may not shine as well, in geometry or physics class, but if they're the point guard, they're showing leadership, they're showing tenacity, they're showing so many other traits. Or if you have a student that has an activist mindset and is heavily in the community and just building synergy around how they can galvanize people and make sure people are informed, that experience is being honored by the current system that One Stone has. And I know that is often the case for a lot of young people. It's like my academic life is separate than my real life, and it's like, actually, you're constantly being assessed. I love that you said, let's bring in the community. I'm so grateful to be a part of your community and that this podcast is going to be part of an assessment.
Yes.
Especially right now when there are so many portions of education that are very divisive, but parents feel like they don't know what's going on, or caregivers don't know what's going on. And young people feel, like I have an obligation here, an obligation there. But to hear that there are so many ways to honor just the lived experience and for it to truly have value, not just in the confines of a brick and mortar classroom.
Mm-hmm.
I really love that. Celeste, if you could give advice to a system leader or any kind of school founder that once is like, hey, we've got our weekly assessments, and then we've got our monthly assessments, and we do SATs and PSATs, and we do TSI and all of the assessments. And they know in their heart that there should be a way for them to honor the work of young people in a different way. What's a small nugget that they could do to kind of just begin their journey for more liberation in assessment?
I'm always going to say the same thing if somebody asks me this question. Bring students into the conversation. Bring them in. So say the problem is, I feel like I'm missing capturing a student's journey in communication. And I know that they're doing SATs and all these other really rigorous things that have been developed to try to capture, let's just communication, and more specifically English language arts.
Yeah.
What are they missing though? A piece I would say they're missing is probably across even beyond English language arts is the student's reflection on the process. And I'm not trying to divert the question, but they might come to you with an idea that is so outside the box of what you were thinking. They could be like, wow, that is another way. It could be super simple. It could be like, what we'd really like is more time and reflection and for our voice to be captured in some sort of communication, whatever it is, in a portfolio presentation or to parents or to other educators. So they see, my words on this, and you can see their voice.
Yeah.
Anywhere you can bring students into the conversation, ask them, where do you really feel inspired? Because assessment, we're hoping, really is a tool for growth, for student growth, to push themselves, to access resources, and to find a way that's authentic to them, that measures both where they are and, more importantly, where they want to go.
Yeah.
In a growth mindset way, not in a sort of stress-inducing or some sort of penalizing way. You're not here yet, therefore you've done something wrong.
Yeah.
It's, you're not here yet, let's get you there. Like, I want you to be stoked. And let's talk about all the ways to get you there. Ask the student,
Yeah.
where are they struggling? What would help them most? What's meaningful to them? And see what they say. Because even within already existing assessment frameworks, a little bit of student voice agency in that process could make all the difference in the world.
Yeah. And you touched on a little bit, Celeste, that, we've been hearing the term anxious generation more and more. And we know that there are a lot of anxieties that are associated when people just say the word test or assessment or quiz or evaluation or evaluatory. And Rhea and Sophie, can you guys share a little bit about how the process the different ways that you all are able to show your learning and demonstrate it, how it either addresses some of those anxieties or just how it contrasts to maybe some of your counterparts that may not be in a similar system?
I can answer this. And I think it kind of, one stone likes to throw you into things. And, things that like make you uncomfortable, and things that you're like, no, I don't want to.
Yeah.
And it's not like a harsh, like, but you have to, it's
Yeah.
like, but you can. And you don't have to do the full thing, like if in my first year I was asked to go present in Austin, Texas at South by, I'd be like, no, like that, I'm not there.
Yep. Bounce pass.
No, I was asked to do in my first year a 5-minute presentation in front of like 15 people, and at the time that was like the worst thing I could have imagined. And I was like, no, I don't want to. And I just had a coach that was just like chill about it, and he was just like, no, but it's like cool. Like it's like 5 minutes and then it's like whatever.
Yeah.
And that's like how he really felt. He wasn't like trying to downplay it for me. He just like really knew that students are capable of this. And I went up and I did it. And then since then I've done 20,000 more presentations, just literally large group. And going to South by Southwest, like the presentation wasn't what scared me, and it slowly, it just kind of pushes you out of your comfort zone and like keeps pushing that boundary, which I think is insanely important right now, especially with there is like more and more ways to stay in a comfort zone, like create these boundaries for yourself. And then there's a lot of people that are sometimes telling you that that's where you need to be. And like that you're in this constraint and that's correct. And that's your comfort zone. And I think that if you allow students, you show them a way that they can push their comfort zone and you tell them that, like you just tell them they don't even have a comfort zone. Like just try, just put yourself into it.
Wow. Yeah.
I think that is huge. And I am like so eternally grateful for putting those experiences in front of me and then just like believing that I can do it. And then when you have 10 adults that just very nonchalantly believe in you, you start being like, am I being like maybe I can do it,
Yeah. Sophie, do you want to add anything to that?
Yes, I do. Raya mentioned like community. And I think that's the biggest thing that I see is you have both the nonchalant teachers being like, yeah, you can go speak in front of 700 people. Like you got that. Like you already know that you have that speech memorized. Like you can do it. But also the culture that's created with our students. I think our growth transcript, we weave in the concept that leadership is just as important as the grade you would get on a math test.
Yeah.
And that is a very big culture shift because you're encouraged to go speak in front of 700 people, or you're encouraged to grab the mic at the end of the day and tell everyone to do their dishes. There's just this encouragement of, yeah, go do that thing because at the end of the day, we all love you anyway. And if you mess up, like you tried and that's what's important. And try again next time. So I think that's the biggest thing for me is there's a culture of just try, just do it. We don't want to judge you because everyone is in their own like part of their journey. And maybe for you, you feel 100% confident going and singing at open mic. And maybe the person after you doesn't, but you know that people are going to cheer for you even if you mess up or don't hit a note. And I think that's just a huge part of our community and the growth transcript that I would have never thought of until I came into One Stone. And just like the concept of like, I know that I have this support system and I don't have to be afraid of failing because these people want me to fail. They want me to fail so I can do better next time or learn how to do more or be comfortable failing. And then I can just keep failing at life. And that's how you grow.
Yeah, that's truly
So,
how you learn. And there's so many different schools and learning environments where it is punitive and you're punished for failing. And it's like, actually, if I never failed, I wouldn't learn. I wouldn't grow, like to your point, Sophie. So I just have truly enjoyed you guys sharing what it is to be in such a strong and nurturing learning environment, hearing about how your various skills that are not just academic or core content are honored, like the grit, like the perseverance, like your effort, strong communication skills. It just it's I don't know, it warms my heart, but also gives me I'm very hopeful. And to hear that it doesn't have to be a large lift if you're trying to make a shift in your holistic approach to assessment and evaluation. Like you just summed it up so great, Celeste, by just saying like, listen to the young people and just like out of that it doesn't cost anything to listen to young people.
Yep.
You don't have to bring in experts or consultants. You don't have to like fly people across the country. It is as simple as like slow it down and listen to the young people. And I guess I would take it a step further and just say not just listen, but also like apply what they've
Yes.
shared with you, you know? Because I could ask, you know, we could do a Google form all day, but like just truly honor what has been shared and truly treat that feedback as priceless as it is and make a move on it. So I really just enjoy this conversation. Raya and Sophie, you are finishing up next year, yes?
yes.
All right. So we've got some graduates coming up. Enjoy this last year. Just know, both of y'all enjoy this last year. Know that this is just the beginning and you guys are already on an amazing path. I want to thank listeners for joining us today as we continue to just share and dive into what does it mean to assess and how we can do it in a more human-centered way. So thank you, One Stone crew. It's great to chat with you guys, and I look forward to talking to you guys very soon.
Thanks, Victoria. Thanks, Getting Smart.
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Getting Smart podcast today.